You're going to hear a quick prompt. And just to welcome everybody, welcome to today's webinar with Christi Scarrow of Lighthouse 9 Group. Today's session is on transforming sales with insight-driven presentations, turning data into deals. Sales is more than building strong relationships. It includes bringing forward ideas and opportunities to solve your customers' problems and identify opportunities. Today's 1-hour webinar will help you identify relevant insights based on the pain points of your customers and showcase them in a way that is meaningful and engaging to close the sale. From this webinar, you'll gain an understanding of how to identify and source relevant insights that address the customer's specific needs. You'll develop the ability to tell your story and pitch your solution effectively using data and insights. You'll present information in a visually appealing manner that resonates with customers, enhancing engagement and sales success. As I mentioned earlier, our presenter is Christi Scarrow, partner at Lighthouse 9. Christi is a consultant, executive coach, keynote speaker, and a best-selling author of the book Truth Warriors. She draws on over 20 years of sales leadership experience with firms including Revlon, Mars Canada, and Reckitt Benckiser. As a partner at Lighthouse 9 Group, she leads the insights and organizational accountability practice and supports clients in the areas of strategy, leadership development, change management, and sales effectiveness. Her current clients include retailers, manufacturers, and professional services. She's passionate about working with sales leaders to deliver growth and drive meaningful change. Now, just some quick housekeeping rules for today. Note that today's session will be recorded and the link to the recording will be sent to you afterwards. We will be encouraging webcams on to get a little FaceTime with your presenter, Christi, as well as your peers, if it allows. You may ask questions or make comments using the chat function in your Zoom dashboard, and they will be addressed at the end during the Q&A session. And for those of you on your CPSA designation pathway, maintaining your professional development units, this session is worth 1 PDU. As a CPSA offering, all attendees will receive a certificate of participation accompanying the recording after the session, which can be downloaded and shared on your LinkedIn profiles. Now, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Christi.
Thank you, Rupelin. So a few things, I mean, you sort of talked about this a bit in our opening, but what we're trying to do is looking at I want to focus on relevant insights. What makes it relevant? Where are some areas that you can consider getting that? And how do you address your customer specific needs? I'll give you some sort of best practices and how you bring to life insights to make it visually appealing, make sure it resonates, and a bit of a structure to be able to do that. So that is our objective. So I'm not going to maybe go into this in detail, but a summary of our objectives overall, is to be able to almost act as insight detectives to hypothesize for our transformational stories, look at methods for finding information that we need, aligning our services, and learn how to be more compelling in our pitches, because we know we're in an era of data is everywhere. And how do we make it relevant? How do we make sure that it's simplified, digestible, and actionable for our customers? So let's start there. A couple different ways I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to focus on one in particular, but how do we use data effectively in our overall selling process? To start with, traditionally, this is how we think about data, and you might think about data in terms of how we market research or understanding our own information. We're trying to understand something. So when we're trying to understand something, let's say your sales are down or your conversion rates are low or something is happening. We start with trying to uncover the facts and data points. So we're looking at something and we're like, why is that happening? So I want to look through my latest reports, my dashboards, the research, whatever it is, and I want to draw out information. And those are all the different data points I might be able to get from whatever particular source I'm looking for. But then we can maybe draw insights from it, hopefully, which is I'm bringing different sources and facts together. So maybe, again, your customer closing rate is down. So thinking about, well, what could be causing that? So I'm seeing a data point or a fact. I now want to draw up some insights in terms of what's behind that. Why is that happening? Maybe there's a happening for a particular time, or there is an action, some tactics that didn't happen that were supposed to happen. Maybe it's a specific customer. So I'm trying to use that data to draw from it sort of the reasoning. And I'm trying to understand what's happening. And as a result of that, I need to take action, right? So hopefully I've learned something. Okay, this is the situation behind it. And this is what probably sales analysts do a lot of. If you have people in category management, they're often looking at what's happening in the business. Or this obviously happens a lot in the financial world, which is let me understand what's happening and from our financial perspective, and let's do something about it, which is the action. And that's the strategy and tactics we're going to take. But here's where I want you to think about it today. I actually want us to think with a sales slant, it is the reverse, right? Instead of trying to understand something, what I'm actually trying to do is influence a decision, right? And our jobs as salespeople is to influence behavior change, influence beliefs, influence them to actually do something, which is why we present to our customers, talk to our customers. So what we actually want to start with is the idea of what is the action we want them to take. So in this case, we're not trying to really understand something. We want them to do something, whatever that may be. Maybe we want them to, buy a premium package instead of our basic package. So what do we want them to do? Then the insights become the hypothesis or the proof points about why they should do it. So I need to prove that whatever action I'm wanting them to take, I have insights to support that. And so in that example, if I want them to buy the premium, I might have some hypothesis. Well, why aren't they buying it? What data do I need? How do I prove to them this is worth it? What are those insights? And then we seek out data to actually confirm that. So it's a bit of it differently how we might think about insights, which is this idea of insights as a big aha moment. But as a salesperson, those insights need to drive the action you want to create. And then you need to go, is it true? You might even, and so I actually almost put a bit of a bracket around this to say, these are your hypothetical insights. I want you to be insight detectives and actually hypothesize what insights might drive them to an action. So I have a good example of when I was in trade marketing and we were launching a new product into the market. It was a new flavor variant. And I asked my marketing team, I said, why are we launching this? I have to go present to the customer about why we're launching this. And they said, well, the CEO thinks it's a good flavor. And I thought, well, that's not helpful. I'm not sure Walmart's going to buy that because the CEO says it's a good flavor. I need to prove to them that it's a benefit to them. And so the action I wanted them to take was to buy the product, but I had to think about what might convince them it's a good product. What are my hypotheses? Maybe I can say this is a flavor variant that I know consumers are looking for. Maybe I can say their competitors are looking for it and they don't have it. I actually made up insights that I thought would prove it, but then I had to go find out if it was true. So if I said this flavor is really, trending in the market as my hypothesis, I then had to go and look at, is it actually trending? Do I have any proof points? So you see the reverse of how we use data in a selling way and an influencing way instead of an understanding way. So that's really important. And I want you to be creative in going, how could I convince my customer of this? What would I have to show them? What insights would I have to show them to convince them to act? A great tool for this is something I call a belief map. And it's really what it does. It looks a little complicated, but it takes that idea of really trying to uncover what insights would I have to find. And as I said earlier, you are driving a change. If you're in sales, you are driving a change in behavior. So what I want you to think about is their current behavior. What are they currently doing? And it could be as simple as they are not currently buying my product, right? They're buying a basic and they're not buying the premium, as my previous example. What do I want them to do? And when you have that clarity, and I would strongly encourage you, anytime you go into a customer meeting, customer presentation, customer discussion, be super clear on this. What do I want them to do coming out of this? Because what's behind that, is the beliefs behind it. So what I want you to think about is that they're currently behaving in a certain way. They're only buying the basic package. I want them to buy premium. Why are they thinking that way? And you may not 100% know. This is where you can ask great questions. But I would encourage you to say, what do they currently think, feel, and believe to behave in that way? Maybe they think it's too expensive. Maybe they think they're getting whatever they need with what they already have. Maybe they are getting it from another competitor. Maybe they don't think you're trustworthy to be able to deliver it. Whatever it is, you have to be that insight detective and go, what do they currently believe? Because if I can understand or hypothesize and hopefully confirm with great questions what they currently believe, then you have to think about, what do they need to think, feel, and believe to do what I want them to do? And that becomes the insights, because if I want them to think, feel, and believe that it's not expensive, then I have to find insights to prove that. I have to find data points to say, actually, this is a lower price point than the competitors. Or if I think that they aren't don't see value in the package, then I need to actually go back and find proof points that other customers have found value, or here's the impact it's had. So you're always thinking about what will drive that action and what are my proof points or my insights to get there. So I want to pause for a minute because this is a really important thing that I want you to reflect on in your own sales world, because there's so many different ways. I'm giving some fairly generic examples, but obviously you're all from different industries and such. I want you to think for a second, and I'm happy if you want to drop a bit of your thoughts in the chat, but I want to give you a minute to think about what behavior change you were trying to influence with a customer right now, or maybe with a toddler, whatever you want. What behavior change are you trying to influence? What might they currently believe that's causing them to behave in this way? And what do you need them to believe to change? So I'm gonna count, like, maybe a minute here, just to give you a second to self-reflect. And I've just got my phone so I don't lose track of time. I'm going to give you 1 minute to reflect. If you want to drop your thoughts in the chat, if you think out loud, want to type it, then please feel free. But I just want to give you a second. I'll be quiet now. Always my phone on the ground. That always feels like a long minute for me. Does anybody, thank you, Jack, I see you're putting in there, trying to influence is have a customer think less about price. Absolutely, right? Sometimes what the behavior you're trying to do is have them recognize the value. And so what they currently believe is potentially I'm not getting what I need. Or they just blatantly think it's too expensive. And there's lots of great questions you can ask in that. Like, too expensive compared to what? What are you thinking about? What's the value you're getting? Because we know as salespeople, pricing, first off, is the absolute easiest objection anyone can give you. They can just say it's too expensive. It's an easy answer. But it's more digging into, well, there's a value proposition, because we will spend more for something we value. That's why Apple does so well, right? There's lots of big brands that we can spend a lot more money on than we probably should, because we value something in it. So be aware of that. So that's a great example there. Thank you. Yeah, Monica as well. Expensive and thinking it's too expensive. So what sort of insights, what do you want them to believe? You want them to believe it's worth it. You want them to believe that you're a competitive price. You want them to believe that they're getting over and above value by maybe paying a little bit more. Or you want to believe it's actually a pretty good price. So that's why it's so important to have that reflection before you go into the conversation. What is stopping them? What is stopping them from making this change? Because everything I need to sell to them and position needs to convince them of something that they may not already believe, which is not an easy thing to do, which is why we love sales, because we're convincing people to do it. Customers seeking out services, free up time. Yeah. So they might be like, yeah, this is going to take too much time. Or a lot of times we're resistant to change, right? Human beings are resistant to change. Our customers are not likely to take big risks to change. And so that's the hard part of our job, which is making them realize if they think something's going to take too much time, too much risk, how do we convince them it's not a big risk? It's going to save you time in the future, whatever it is. So this is an important thing I want you to really think about when you're crafting any messaging to your customer. Thank you for sharing. For those who piped in, hopefully you had some thoughts that came out of that. So let's shift a little bit into this idea of, we talk about this big concept of an insight. So I want to drill into this, and I'm going to actually on Mentimeter in a moment do a little game, and we have a leaderboard. So if you put your name in there or a fake name in there, we'll see who floats to the top. But just for fun. But I want us to think about facts as insights versus facts. That idea of not just spitting out data points, it's the bigger why, it's the what's happened, it's a culmination of facts, and it can be acted upon. So that's how I want you to frame this up. I'll give you a bit of an example. If I gave this data point to you and I said, oh, you know what, your sales grew at plus 20% last year. My initial might be, well, that sounds pretty good. Thumbs up, right? But what if your target was plus 30? Or what if your competitors were growing at plus 40? Is it good anymore? So that data is only relevant if it's compared to something. And a lot of times that's one of the mistakes I see people put data points out there, but it's really not telling me anything. It's not meaningful because it's not comparing it to anything. Here's another example. Last promotion had a lift of 150, but the promotion before it had a lift of 175. So it's not that good. Or I did a promotion afterwards, nobody bought anything. So sales declined afterwards. So my actual end goal, my promotion wasn't helpful. Or maybe it cost me double to achieve it. So great, I did a promotion, it was successful, but I spent a ton of money on it. So maybe it wasn't worth it. So that's something else to think about is when you're showcasing any kind of data, are you comparing it to something? Are you allowing that? So we're going to do a little fact versus insight quiz. It's just 6 questions. So once again, Rupin, if you're able to drop the link in again, if you don't already have it, if you already had it, all you should have to do is refresh. I think I'm kind of in a space where I can see people are joining. Awesome. I've got players jumping in. Everyone has a nice little strange avatar that I think is just selected. So I'll just give you 1 second. Many of you are jumping in. Perfect. And then you'll have basically 10 seconds to answer. And what I'll do is it's going to show you either a fact or an insight. Take your best guess, fastest wins as well. So there's speed involved in this. And then we will have a little bit of a fun leaderboard to see who is the fastest and who can get the most correct. So I got 33 players here. So I'm gonna show Mentimeter here on the screen so we can see it as we go. And all right. Ready? We got 35 players in. So ready? Oh, enter. Just. Okay. There you go. Ooh, we got half and half. So some of you said it, yeah. So really, it's just so it does. We have a conversion rate of 25%. The insight, there's no insight. What's it telling me? Is that good? Is that bad? Is that up? Is that down? Is that better than my competitors? So it really is just one statement fact. It doesn't tell me what to do with it. It doesn't tell me where to go. So that's the first one. So let's see if we get into the next one. Oops. Hopefully I didn't mess the question too. Okay, here we go. Ooh, half and half again. Insight. So the reason this is an insight, and this is tricky stuff. So this is why we're doing this. It brings together 2 concepts. So investing in customer experience can lead to, so it drives to action. So what does it tell me? I need to invest in a customer experience tool. Now it doesn't have a comparison, but 25% boost means it's going up. So it's making it better, right? So if it actually is saying an increase over your current. So it's alluding to that. It's basically telling me, okay, I need to invest in my customer experience tools. I can increase my business or my customer retention by 25%. So it brings together multiple facts. So we're getting a little tricky, but you guys are getting it. So let's see. Next one. So there's 6 in total. We'll get the leaderboard after this. Ooh, tied. Insights. So similar to the last one, it's telling me what I need to do, data-driven approach to marketing. Now, I may not know exactly what that is, so hopefully there's more details behind that. It's an increase, so it's a comparable to something, and it's a percentage. So I think that's a little bit of the difference again. Let's see. So let's see who's on the top of the leaderboard here. I got David. Oh, wait, hold on. I think Rick. Oh, it's moving all right. David, Rick, and Nadine are one, two, three. Let's see what happens next. 3 more questions. Well done, guys. 3 more. All right, yep. Those who got fact, that's it. Because it's always think about the so what. What do I do about that? I don't know if 50 million is good. First off, I don't know if that's growing. I don't know if that's big compared to any other industry. I don't know what to do with that. So it's really a fact I'm telling somebody. It's not driving towards action. 2 more. Let's see where we land. Oh, that's it, guys. Yeah, totally. So what? What does that? I mean, maybe that is good. I don't know. If you told me 85%, it's up, more customers are satisfied than before, you might tell me they're more satisfied because of our customer service. You're layering on. So really think about when you make statements like this to your customer or part of your presentations, am I giving them some kind of context? Is it comparable? Is it driving to action? Those are the key things. Last one. Let's see if David can hold on to his place at the top here. You guys are getting it for sure. Totally. It's predictive. And you think about the fact that you would have to do some insight analysis, or somebody would have to do some insight analysis to be able to come up with this. It brings together multiple facts. I would expect to have to look at people who did, adopt the solution that they have. We saw a reduction. So that's indicating a comparison. And there's an action that says, I should adopt this. So let's see who lands and then we'll get back. Oh, Rick may have. Oh, Croc just came in there. Oh, Croc, whoever you are, you took them all down at the end there. Well done. Well done. So came out of nowhere. Wonderful. Thank you guys for sharing that. So let's go back to our PowerPoint here. And just a quick checklist reminder, and just something I don't think Rupelin said, but I'm happy to share these slides as a PDF as well. So you can have references back to these, because this is a checklist here as well. Thinking about when I've got a statement out there that's meant to be an insight, does it bring together multiple data points? Is it about the why, and does it drive towards action? And in particular, the action you're trying to take, make sure that's the case. So if I shift for a second, because thinking about, so I have some insights that I want to draw together. Where are some ways that you could actually identify these, right, in your customer presentation? So looking at their own websites and social media posts, there's lots of industry studies that can provide specific things to your industry, that can give you some facts that you can draw together. But again, don't just put one fact on there. Tell me what the meaning is behind that. But these are some sources of those facts. Consumer studies, do you do focus groups? And sales, I really encourage you to leverage your organization. Don't live on a mountain there. Make sure if you are hypothesizing what insights you need to convince your customer to change their behavior, Go to your marketing departments, go to your operational departments and whoever, go to your financial teams and say, what do we have? Like, if I want to be able to show that this is an investment that is worth having, and I need to be able to show that other people who implemented, drove a 10% improvement in their operating costs, who can help me draw that out? So leverage your organization. But you need to be the lead to that. You have the ability to say, tell me more. So go into your own, if you happen to have, you're selling products that are in stores, you can do in-store shopper intercepts, market research. And I specifically said not customer satisfaction, because I think when sometimes I say that, everyone's like, well, we have a customer satisfaction survey. That might do it, but it's more so about what's happening for your customers. And maybe this exists in your organization, or maybe you can do brief pulse checks, but lead those questions. What can we uncover? I know whenever I was building out sort of big trade decks, marketing hated to see me because I would walk over and I say, do we have a study on this? Do we know how consumers shop or why they buy? And we may or may not, but I'm asking the questions. Sometimes you can look at your own shipment data, right? What you have that absolutely, what you ship to your customers. You can pull out what are some growth trends? What products are doing well? What are things that I can show to my customer to prove to them that this is actually valuable? I always just want to caveat that to say you don't want to share competitive data. So your customers may compete with each other. So you have to always be careful that you're not sharing one customer data with another customer data, just as a side note. You can look at your customer service data. What are consumers telling you? You could say, a lot of consumers in our overall, comments to this, make comments about this and are happy with our customer service, or our customer service responds within XYZ. And that's going to tell your customer, maybe they don't believe that you're reliable, or you are very reliable, and your insights are, yeah, you know what, we know that we follow up on our customer calls 99.9% of the time. Of course, I'm making that up, but that's the hypotheses you want to dig up. There's consumer forums and postings and socials that consumers build their own communities. Any consumer behavior research. So not just maybe not your customer, but their customers. When I talk about consumer, what I mean is you might sell B2B, but they sell to other people. And what you want to do is you want to find out who they sell to, because that's really relevant information. So think about that as well. Lastly, and I use this with caution, obviously with AI and ChatGPT, it gives us a new source. We still know that it may not be completely reliable source, but I have been recently using it for a lot of research, and a prompt such as, give me sources that answer the question. So I've said, like, give me sources that tell me what's happening in the organic food industry. For example, give me some trends. What I wouldn't say is give me trends, because it spits out a whole bunch of generic stuff. But if you say, give me sources that answer the question, what are the trends in the organic food industry? That was my example. Then it would say, here it is, here's the sources. I then went to those sources, make sure they were credible. The last thing you want to do is put information in front of your customers that is not true, that is from an invalid source. So be very careful about that. Those were some sources that I have leveraged. I've just opened up Mentimeter one more time because I think we can learn a little bit from each other, or maybe I twig something from you here. So this is just an open-ended question. If you could take a minute, and I would just love you to indicate what source of data you might leverage, either from that list or that you could leverage, or so we can just get an understanding of learning from each other of other things that may come up in there. So. And I'll kind of read them out. I won't show back and forth anything in particular as you guys put them in. So trade magazines, great. That's a great start, right? So there's going to be insights in there. There's going to be data points in there. And sometimes it'll be, again, one source will give you one data point, another source will give you a different data point, and you bring them together to provide insights. What other thoughts? Association research, that's a good one, because a lot of industry associations have research that, and some of it you have to buy, to be fair. Like the examples I gave, sometimes there's free research sources, other times there's paid research sources. But if it absolutely gets you the data you need, and it converts into a sale, you may be able to convince your organization to support that investment. So don't give up if it's like, oh, that's going to cost me $1,000 for that report. But if I know what I'm getting out of that and the data that's going to really drive home, that's okay. Seeing many more things fly in here, so I'll do my best to capture kind of the essence. Trade shows, great one too. Trade shows, conferences, those are a great source of information. Company sales reports, LinkedIn. Really, LinkedIn is really now a great source of professional understanding. Again, always check your sources. Always check your sources. And you'll see when I talk about the best practice of how to display it is to make sure that you're referencing it, because there's nothing worse than putting something on a page and then not being able to back it up. Industry analysts, third-party research, customer annual reports, all really great information. So thank you for adding to that, because I want you to be creative in how you can clarify these insights, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're guessing what would convince your customer. You're guessing what a great insight would be to tell your answer, and then you're finding it. You're having to find it. So lots of different sources you could consider. All right, let me shift to the last sort of core bit of our conversation today. And these are really, how do you present insights in a way that is relevant, visually appealing, ways that are going to bring it to life? Because if you've got the right ones, then you want to make sure you create the right context for it. So it starts with this idea of what I'm calling know your CPR. And so we know CPR typically is obviously a life-saving measure. And this is something I want you to think about when you're preparing for any customer conversation, which is, do you know the context of what you're walking into? Who will be in that meeting, whether it's in person or virtual? Who's going to be there? What do they expect? What might be happening in their world? Because if they're not at all focused on what you're going to share with them, you want to be aware of that. You want to be aware of that, and you want to be aware of, even, are this the decision maker I'm going to be speaking to, or am I going to have to focus differently? Or maybe there's a functional person in that room and your message needs to be slightly different. So by knowing what's going on and who's going to be there, that starts you off. So the second bit is, why are you here? So what is the purpose of this meeting? And be really clear about what you're trying to achieve there and what they're expecting. So I often talk about this idea of the WIFM, the what's in it for them. What are they really hoping to get out of you in this conversation? Because your customers, I know, they hear lots and lots of sales pitches. And the more you can make it relevant to them, be really clear that I think this is what's top of mind for them. And going back to that belief map, if you know what they currently believe, then you can very much be clear on, what do I need to focus on to convince them, as opposed to talking about a whole bunch of things that aren't very, very useful. For example, I was doing training with a sales team, and I said, and they wanted to always have sustainability as the number one slide on every one of their presentations. And I said, well, I know you do great sustainability. I know it's a big initiative for you, but is that really the first thing you need to start with? And is that the main focus for that particular customer? Maybe for one customer, absolutely the answer is yes. You're going to convince me to buy from you if you have a sustainable practices. Other customers are going to be like, that's a little bit lower on my list. So be aware about what they want to hear. And the last and maybe most important thing is, what does success look like for you and for them? What am I trying to do? And this is the change you're trying to create. Do not go into any sales meeting without knowing what you're trying to do and what they could benefit from. Because if you come out with a win-win solution, you're selling because you believe in your business. You probably believe in helping others. So you want them to walk away with feeling like they got what they needed, and you need to feel what you got what you needed. And that could even be, I just want to have another meeting after this. That could be the result and success. Or, I want to meet with their manager the next time, or I want them to do this demo, or whatever it is. Be really clear on that result. This slide is probably the most important thing I will have you think about in this whole hour, because I see so many salespeople get this wrong. This idea, when you are presenting to your customer, start with them. Start about them. Because a lot of times we put together presentations and we start talking about us. We talk about our credentials. We talk about our company. We talk about our solution. And my strong encouragement is, you need to start getting them to think about why they need to change before you start talking about you. So when you talk about why change, it's getting their attention. It's things like a slide that's going to say something like, you know what? You're losing share in this market, or this is trending higher, or your competitors are innovating ahead of you. And by the way, I do like to suggest that why change is a problem instead of an opportunity. And I've had big debates on this, but again, customers are reactive. So you can just say $4 million opportunity or benefits and costs. But if you go at them at a starting point about, you're struggling right now. Maybe people are leaving, your customers aren't buying, you're inefficient in your operations, you're losing share, your sales are declining. Any kind of problem that's their problem that you start with is going to get them to think about, I need to do something different. I need to change. And if you get them to realize they need to change, which is your first job, then you have to get them to realize why they have to change now. And that's hard as well, because it's like, okay, so there's a problem in front of you. I see the problem. I hear the problem. You can engage them in the discussion. Do you see this problem? Do you see this issue? Doesn't have to be hit them hard with you're no good. It has to be a why you need to change. Go to the why now. Why do you have to make this change now? So slides or topics that talk around, you know what, in 2 years, this type of technology will be obsolete. Investing now will save you time and cost in the future. Recognize that these two things have nothing to do with you yet. Nothing to do with you. So if you're crafting your story and your slides or your message, if it's more of a conversation, why do they change? Why do they have to change now? And then why you? Because if you've got them convinced, shoot, I need to do something different to be more efficient. And if I don't do it now, it's going to cost me more in the future. Then it's like, what's your solution? How can you help me? And then you can say, this is our solution. We offer solutions to help this. This is how we can decrease your operating cost or make your employees happier or get your consumers to buy. That's the tie-in. So this is the most important thing I want you to take away. Don't start with a presentation with all about you, because first off, it's kind of boring. They see it all the time. Second of all, you get their attention with something that's important to them. They will listen to your solution. So some other things to think about. This idea of headlines. I really like, if you're building out slides, I really love to use headlines. And please don't think of this. This is where people get it wrong. Headlines are not a title with an underline. They are literally what they're called a headline, like you would see on a newspaper. This is the main thing I want them to know. And then in this example, I've got a headline that says consumers are worried about germs and seeking information. And then I have a slide that shows how the uptake in searching for information on disinfectant. You can see this is 2020, so not a surprise. But the headline is, what do I want them to know? What do I want them to know? And the source is, where did I get that from? Where am I pulling this data? Those are two key things. But the headline is really important. Use that space. At the end of the day, if you're presenting slides, you're probably sending them through. They might share them to somebody else. They might forget exactly what you said. But the headlines are like, this is what I want them to know on this slide. Whatever else is on there, it could be pictures, it could be a graph, whatever else, use the headline to determine your main message. The other thing to be aware of is, I've seen companies that do this. I've seen sales presentations. If you're very data focused, you might be tempted to put a lot of charts, a lot of data. If you are yourself probably very, interested in data, you might be tempted to share a lot of information, but don't do it. Don't do it, because it's very complicated. We can't process it. There's lots of information on here. They might focus on something specific that's not even part of the main message. You are guiding the narrative. Your presentation should literally almost like focus the eye, like look here, look here, look here. And when you have a slide that has multiple data points, multiple graphs, lots of stuff on it, really hard to focus that conversation. So be crisp about what you send. Some people are like, well, I only want to do 5 slides, so I don't want to put a lot on there, so I'm going to squish a bunch on one slide. Then you need to do 7 slides and delete something. So just be aware of that. The other one, and this one is, it's just kind of obviously an example of a ton of data. Only put relevant data on it. So you might even find, let's say you find a table that's got lots of great information, but you really want to narrow their attention. on one part of that chart, then maybe you can strip out the other pieces of information. This is one where I used to call on Loblaws, and as the buyer, I swear he made it as a fun event for himself. I would come in with a presentation and I'd have maybe a nice graph or a nice table, and he would always draw his attention to something on that page that had nothing to do with what I was trying to talk to him. Well, why is that really tiny category over there declining at -5? And I was like, I don't know, it's not relevant. But he had this way of always trying to catch me out, I think. And I end up just, okay, I'm not showing that. Or I would know every data point I put on that slide. So if you're finding things from different sources and you're copying them in, or even if you're the kind of organization that you rely very heavily on marketing to provide you with your sales material, and they give you charts and data points, you don't have to use it all. You can strip it out. You can be very clear on what you're putting in front of them, because I've seen salespeople who are like, well, marketing gave me this, it gives me all my data, so I'm just going to put it out there, and then they get questioned on it. And as soon as you get questioned, you don't know a data point on there, or it's something that's not relevant, or worse even, it takes away from your messaging. I had somebody, I was coaching through their presentations, and they put in a slide about, inflation was increasing and pricing were increasing. And I said, why are you doing that? Why are you putting that slide in there at all? Like, well, it's true. I'm like, well, we know it's true, but it does not support your message. You're actually trying to pitch a premium product. Why are you putting in a slide or a data point that says that inflation is going up? You're not lying. They know it. Just don't put it in the presentation. You don't have to be unbiased in your presentations and show all the data. You are transforming. You're influencing. You are not creating understanding. So just remember that. Don't put a data point on a page if you don't know it, or if it's not relevant to what you're trying to do. And then we get down to the types of graphs, and these are multiple examples, but what do you use a table? Do you use a pie chart? Do you use a bar? Always try to make it more visually appealing. If you could put something that's a table into a graph, it's always a little bit nicer. As you can see, it kind of visually draws my attention in this sort of bottom right example. I see things are in decline compared to the market. It kind of draws my attention better than having to navigate everything in a table. A table might be useful if you're trying to get them to compare one item to another. I'm in general not a fan of pie charts. I don't like them. There's probably only a minimal time to use them. But the reason I don't like them is, for the most part, they're not very comparable. It only gives you one comparison. So if you put a pie chart and you say this is the size of the business or something, that's one data point. But if you put in a bar chart something similar, it usually can say this is the size and this is the difference and this is the comparison. So that's my general philosophy. Again, I've had big debates about that from people who love pie charts. And the pie chart could, again, does it tell your story? Does it support your message? If you want to say we are the leader in the market, and a pie chart shows you at 90% and all your competitors at 10%, maybe that's the time to use a pie chart, because it supports exactly your message, which is, look how big we are. It's exactly the message you're trying to say. But if you're trying to show more of a comparison about what's happening with your data, then think about using alternatives. So we can't obviously go all into it in a 1-hour webinar, but there's lots of different ways to have you think about, how do I represent this data in a way that's going to be most aligned to the story that I'm telling? And lastly, and kind of as I was just alluding to, what should the story be? Think through, as you're doing your CPR, this is what I call kind of just a mini sort of storyboard. If you are building out slide decks, even if you're given slide decks to present to your customers, I really want you to think about, your customer best, or you should. So think about, do I have to present it as it's handed to me? Is there a way I can craft it to be more relevant and more impactful? So as I said, the first point on that slide should be something, a problem or an opportunity impacting them, your customer. Some of the insights can be, okay, let me tell you about, the situation, the why change, the why now, and then the insights about how I can solve that problem. Be clear on the actions that you want. So, actions about, when can we have the next meeting? Does this product resonate with you? What else do you need to know from me for next steps? And then get that alignment on next steps. And then there's a backup. So if you're the kind of person that you're used to having tons of slides with tons of data, You might feel thus inclined to put them in in an appendix and a backup. That's okay. But the only encouragement I would say is be very careful that you don't have slides in your appendix or your backup that you're going to send through that actually don't tell your story. Because if you've got somebody who is super fascinated by data, they might look through those appendix. And if it tells something you don't want it to tell, don't put it in there. So you can use it as backup data if you want. You can use it if you're presenting and you want to just know that you can maybe refer to a slide, because sometimes I'll get pushed back to say, well, I need to show them how I got to that number. And so, okay, put in your backup. If they ask a detailed question, zip ahead to that slide. But just don't send something through that's not going to tell your story. So that's where I've seen people go wrong. So quick checklist that, again, you can have this as your own reference when you're doing your own presentations. Is it clear? Is it logical? Do you start with them? Do you focus on what's important to them? Do you use headlines to make sure your points are there? You're sharing insights, not just facts. Can you back it up, right? So if someone says, well, what does that mean? Or how did you get there? Know that. Can you identify the data sources? Are the charts relevant? Are they meaningful? Key thing, can you present in the time schedule? Be aware of the slides that you might discover. You know what, if I had to, I could drop this. I had a buyer who was infamous for this. She would take this is way back, presenting in person all the time, and she'd grab the slide, the presentation from me, she'd flip to page 8, and then she would hand it back to me, and that'd be the end of our conversation. So think about what you really want to share. If they suddenly say to you, I only got 10 minutes now, or they show up to the meeting 10 minutes late, what are the most important things? Think of that. Does every slide back up the change? So if there's a slide in there, and I really encourage you, if you can, is review it with a peer. Talk to your colleagues. Get them to say, does every slide in here make sense? Because a lot of times we're crafting things and it makes complete sense to us because we're totally engaged in it. But if you talk it through with somebody who may not be as involved, they might say, I don't understand this chart. I don't understand this data point. I don't understand what you're trying to say here. That's very, very valuable if you can leverage that. Again, there's slides in your appendix, good, and the clear call to action. Make sure all of that is there. So the only thing I always like to leave about this, your customer doesn't care about how much you know until they know how much you care, which is all about that idea of it's all about them. If you're good in sales, you know that knowing and understanding your customer and only putting relevant information in front of them is the best way to build trust. It's the best way to be able to actually create that change you're trying to create. So I'm going to give us one last reflection moment, but in Mentimeter, if you could, before I open it up for questions. I know we're getting close to time here. Just given what we just talked about, any quick little, I'm going to do this actions that you can put on Mentimeter for me and commit to for yourself. I can't see who it is on Mentimeter, so I can't call you up and hold you accountable. But what's one action you think you can take, having just spent the last 50 minutes hearing this conversation? So if you need to refresh, Rupal, I don't know if you want to redrop it in. This one takes another minute or so to type in.
And I've just put the link in the chat as well.
Well, people are dropping in the chat. Perfect. Okay.
There we go, Mark. Ask marketing to gather customer testimonials.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a couple things. Yeah. There's a chat. If I look through the ideas, and I think I just saw in the chat, I scanned it quickly. If you're asking for the Mentimeter spit out, yes, and the outputs, I will include those as well. I see spend time on ChatGPT to learn more about my industries and clients' business, better listening what the customer's needs are, discuss less of me and the company at the beginning, use headlines, changing tactics from data insights to actions, and flipping the switch on that, relevant on data points, focus on the customer first. Awesome, guys. I honestly think of that one switch in your presentations will help you stand out, because so many sales folks spend their time telling them all about you And everyone likes to hear about them. So customers going in and being really clear that you understand their pain, you understand what's important to them, you have insights that are interesting to them and relevant, and you have insights that prove that you can help them. That's all you need. That's all you need. I know I'm oversimplifying a little bit because some customers are still going to be a pain in the butt. But other than that, if you got that structured, then you'll be in a good position to actually help them make that buying decision. All right. Thank you for those who've dropped their commitments into the chat. This is a little bit for yourself, just as much as it is for me, to make sure that the time that you invested here is valuable, right? I want to make sure that you are using this time and thinking about the actions that you can take, because you're investing in yourself right now and you're investing in your customer. So that just brings me to any questions. Ripple, I don't know if you've seen anything already come through, or if people want to drop them in the chat, or if people want to raise their hand. I think we can do that.
Yeah, feel free to take yourself off mute or raise your hand. No questions so far apart from the material today in the chat, but we'd love to answer any questions. We have a few minutes to do so. So please feel free to either put your question into the chat, unmute yourself, or raise your hand, and we'll get to it right now. Thanks everybody for joining and for participating today.
I'm seeing we got a few still putting in their actions, so I appreciate that. Well, if there are no questions or nothing's coming to mind now, I hope you will try to put some of these things into place into your sales presentations and your sales messaging. But I'm happy if you want to reach out with any questions, keep in touch, connect with me on LinkedIn. I would greatly appreciate that. So I will leave it there. If there's no other, what is the one thing you would always recommend for new sales? I just saw that come in from Nadine. Thank you for asking that. My biggest learning for sales, I think people come into sales and their belief is, again, they have to tell the customer they have to convince the customer, which is somewhat true because the job is influence. But my biggest encouragement would be to ask good questions, always be engaging. And there is a great, it's quite old at this point, but I still think it's very applicable. There's a great technique called spin questioning. And it really is a way of questioning to understand, but also to sell and influence. So asking good questions, asking questions throughout, because it's all about engaging them. And I find newer salespeople, and if you give them, a slide deck or give them a script, and they'll go through it all, and they may not pause for breath or engage the customer as they go. And you're much better to engage them and say, would that meet your needs? If we did this, would it help? Would that work for you? Does this resonate with you? Is this a situation that you're seeing? How have you been handling this? If you're asking these questions throughout, then you're gauging where they are. I see too many new salespeople who, again, go through their deck, thank you, and then they're nervous to ask for the close, or they're nervous to ask for the sale, and they presented their information, so they're like, phew, I'm done. Thank you very much. Goodbye. So they haven't engaged them. They don't know if and again, our customers are going to be polite sometimes. So if you ended your whole sales presentation and said, any questions, just as I did, they might say no. And you have no idea if that customer actually heard you, listened to you, liked what you had to say. So you basically want to ask the questions throughout, and you want to ask open-ended questions, because even though Rupert and I could say we failed in the way I asked this, saying any questions is not going to probably have much response, but asking, what questions do you still have? What can I provide you to make this more relevant? What do you need? And I talk about objection handling as well. That's a big one, right? You actually want to get the customer to tell you their objections. And that feels very awkward, especially for new people. Well, they agreed. They didn't say anything. They didn't ask anything. They nodded their heads. They must be happy. And then you never hear from them again, right? So if you ask the questions up front, and even say, what are you concerned about still? That's a scary question to ask, but that's important. That gives you a lot of great information. So that's my biggest suggestion for new sales. Ask great questions. Always try to spend your time understanding your customer and listening to their concerns. And then you'll get to a good place in being able to craft your solution. And if you walk into a meeting and you're presenting an idea and it has nothing, they have no, it's not relevant to them and they actually take you in a different direction, follow them. Don't stick to the script. Always make it about them. That's my biggest piece of advice. Thank you for the question, Nadine.
That's great advice, Christy. Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank everybody who's joined today's session for being part of today's webinar. I'm going to slot in the link for our next one as well, taking place on October 23rd on how to navigate key sales trends for 2025. Huge thanks to Christy for hosting a fantastic webinar. I know we'll all take away some fantastic insight from today. And I hope that you are able to take great advantage of having today's information into your next presentation or pitch. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great day. Thanks,
All right. Thank
Christy.
you. It was great. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you very much, everyone.